Namaste. Welcome to this session where I'm going to be sharing insights, revelations that have emerged yet again from the weekly transmissions that I've been holding. Thank you for those of you participating in them. They are revolutionary, revelational. They are awakening a lot of ancient knowledge. I feel these are wisdom's knowledge that we already know deep within us. And the way that I receive insights, it downloads as a packet of wisdom. You may refer to it as claircognizance. And as I unpack that, I'm unpacking in real time with you, which is the channeled experience, because as much as there is wisdom within that, there is also a healing energy. There is a transformational, multidimensional perspective where I refer to it as a soul language, because when it's meeting you on a soul level, there are multidimensional aspects to the healing, if we can even call it healing. For me, it's part of the awakening process. This is something that I wanted to talk about today. So I'd like to begin with just a gentle meditation to center. So if you can just close your eyes just for a few moments and take a deep breath all the way through down to your toes. Exhaling, and with each breath in and out, just feeling yourself unwinding, relaxing, and owning your presence with your awareness, owning this moment, calling your presence back into this moment. As we invoke your soul presence. And we'll just set the intention to receive whatever is needed to be open, receptive to love, to healing, to awakening. Just feel that gentle openness within your heart as we begin this, and you can open your eyes or stay in whichever state you prefer. So what is the awakening process? Again, right now it is incredibly relevant with what's happening on the planet. And each soul will have many awakenings. There is the initial awakening, which in itself can take on many forms. It can take on the form of a slow incline of awakening. Some of you have been awake on some level since birth or your early childhood. Or it can take the form of a sudden spontaneous awakening, a sudden shift in reality, in your reality, your personality. And so when we generally talk about awakening, we're referring to that awakening to the truth. What is the truth? The truth of what is just behind the curtain, behind the veil. And that truth, as we awaken to that truth, we are mirrored our own inner truth, which begins to become activated and starts its own journey of self-discovery with no ending. There is no ending to awakening. And the awakening process is something that keeps evolving. Once you become aware and conscious of the fact that you are even awakening. And this is a paradox of awakening. To be awake, in the traditional definition, would refer to a duality between being asleep and awake. Yet awakening is a process that is multidimensional. It is beyond that duality. It is beyond the confines of being in one category. And the awakening process, once it touches your consciousness, is a transformative energy that meets you in this present moment and travels in both directions into the past and into the future, and begins to awaken across time, because your perception of your past changes as you awaken, and your perception and your connection to the future changes as you begin to awaken. And as you know, on this awakening journey which you are on, if you are listening to this because you're curious and exploring, which is the key principle of the awakening energy, as you explore this path, you will know that there are many aspects to the awakening process, some of them incredibly challenging, some of them incredibly joyful. And waking up to truth is a challenging process, because truth, by its very nature, challenges the norm. It challenges what is familiar. It challenges what is being experienced. A greater truth always will challenge another truth that is being experienced. And the paradox of truth is that all truth is true to the experiencer. Whatever you're experiencing in this moment is true because you're experiencing it. It is valid and it is necessary, as you are an expression of the divine, living out a unique experience that the divine wants to experience through one person, and that is you. Through the one personality matrix, to experience it in that unique way of you, for the greater experience, for the greater truth to evolve. And so truth is fluid. It is a moving energy. Traditionally, truth is seen as something fixed. It holds, by its nature, an idea that there is a single solution to a problem. Yet when we're talking about truth in this way, in this spiritual way, we are referring to its fluid nature of a joyful exploration of consciousness, of existence. And when we're open to that perspective, we see truth as not simply a concept or something that we can write down. It is a fluid energy that is being experienced through every single human being. And every single human being is experiencing itself through truth. And so in the awakening process, initially or along the journey at key checkpoints, there will always be revelations of new truth. And the way that revelations show themselves first initially is through disruption, because the existing reality is disrupted by that truth. Yet disruption can be seen in many ways. When we see disruption as an incredibly important part of the journey, we see it as a liberation from the bondage of an older idea that has held us captive. Because while all truth is valid, when a greater truth comes in, and here lies the paradox, it will always liberate us into a greater experience and a greater state of consciousness. And it is only in these experiences that we understand that we are moving into a new arena of experience. During the awakening process, there are many areas of an expansion of realization, of awareness, of perception. And these key checkpoints of expansion may commonly be referred to as shifts. A shift is an upgrade. It is an awakening. It is a micro awakening. And yet it is still an awakening. And so when we talk about awakening, we are talking about an idea that can be perceived on a microcosmic level and a macrocosmic level. The awakening process allows us to view the concept of suffering in a very different way. Suffering without spiritual understanding or awareness of the implications of the positive benefits of what suffering can provide will only result in the negative perception of what suffering is. And this is completely understandable, considering what suffering creates. Usually, suffering creates many feelings of despair, loss, hopelessness, disempowerment, limitation, separation. And when these emotions are being experienced, felt, it is very easy to see why there is hopelessness. Yet you are always experiencing reality from more than one perspective. There is a human part which is experiencing the emotions, which is absolutely necessary, because all of those emotions that are experienced within that period of suffering, whatever experience that is being experienced, is being experienced for a reason. Every single emotion is a manifestation of the divine through you. And with it, it carries its treasure, which can only be understood as the emotion moves through the body. And then there is another part of you, the part of you that is nodding internally right now, that is resonating, that is hearing these words and already knows, that is also awakening during this time. And it is this part that oversees the stories that you are experiencing, oversees the suffering. And it is a disconnection between these two parts that creates more suffering. Because the perception and the lack of access to the greater awareness can create a tremendous amount of suffering. By not understanding the greater benefits of what suffering can provide. And so what possible benefits can suffering provide? This is part a great part of the human journey here on planet Earth is to understand and experience this incredible teaching. It is not an easy one, and there are many experiences that will be endured in order to appreciate and understand this great teaching. Because it is the understanding of suffering that liberates each soul from the bondage to suffering. Suffering is part of the awakening process, as it provides a doorway into the parts of ourselves that we have ignored, repressed, suppressed. It is also the doorway to understanding what we are resisting. When this new reality comes in, when the awakening occurs, when a new truth emerges which destabilizes, threatens, challenges what is being experienced, that resistance creates suffering. And all of this is completely understandable. Yet when you tune into this greater part of you who sees all, connects to all, and is being reminded yet again of the deeper reality, you access once again the greater perception across time of what suffering can provide. Suffering is a release mechanism and a huge opportunity to look at the wounds, at the emotions that are emerging from the parts that are desperately calling out to be heard, to be seen from within, and acknowledge them. One of the greatest tools you can use with suffering is to simply acknowledge it. And that word simply isn't used lightly. To acknowledge something is to accept that it is even happening. To understand that it is being experienced. And to also acknowledge within that there is a meaning, a purpose behind this, that most likely will not be understood in the moment it is being experienced. It is tuning into the part that has foresight and acknowledging that all experiences serve to grow, to develop, to heal, to transform. And as one moves through suffering, that suffering transforms into golden treasure that provides wisdoms, awareness, realizations to draw upon. For the future. And so when we see suffering as part of the awakening process, instead of trying to reject it, or believe that you are doing something wrong by experiencing it, it provides an opportunity to look at it as an important part of awakening. What is then provided is a very different perception of human life, spiritual human life. Instead of the spiritual path being seen as an upward incline of happiness and movement away from suffering, it becomes an acceptance of all that is being experienced. There is no movement away from the human experience. There is a deepening towards the human experience, yet carrying all of the spiritual tools and awareness and loving presence that you are accessing and awakening in itself. And then the question becomes, what is awakening? Which part of you is awakening? Is it the part that is listening to these words, knowing, remembering, attuning? And if so, as this part awakens, as you feed this part more and more with spiritual wisdom, healing, care, self-love, you activate a presence and an energy and a frequency that your body needs, your emotion needs, all aspects of your consciousness needs. Unconditional acceptance, unconditional love. And while these words are grandiose in their magnificence, unconditional means unconditional, yet it is possible to access the frequencies of unconditional love and unconditional acceptance and anchor them within, even if you are not unconditionally accepting. Because the energy of unconditional acceptance, when it enters the body and consciousness, is the energy of love. Love is an awakening force. And to awaken does not mean that we are moving away from something. It's moving towards the experience. It's awakening within and awakening to all experiences, to view them differently, to see them with love, to appreciate them with love, to acknowledge them with love. And through this, a deeper and deeper appreciation of life occurs, and a deeper anchoring occurs into the earth plane. And the awakening, which is also the ascension, is also a process of descension of your higher consciousness into your earthly self, into the prism of yourself on this planet. And the greater joy that arises emanates from a deeper understanding that there is nowhere to run to. There is nowhere to run away from. There is nothing within to hide from or reject. There is an all-encompassing energy of compassion that is seeking to touch every aspect within. And so when we talk about unconditional acceptance, it also includes accepting the part that does not accept who you are. Similarly, with unconditional love, it is loving the part that does not love who you are. What kind of love is that? It is even willing to love the part that has not changed yet. And so it is not trying to fix. There is nothing to remedy, while there is so much to awaken. And so when we approach the awakening process in this way, we see it as an adventure, a game, a sacred game, a sacred experience. A sacred experience that we want to participate in, that activates the curiosity, the explorer within you to want to expand and deepen your joyful experience here on planet Earth. And so the perception of suffering as it changes, as we see it as a pivotal experience within the awakening process, as a checkpoint, a gateway, a quantum leap that allows for a huge mass of emotions to be experienced at once. These are often referred to as a dark night of the soul. And these have also been referred to as the dark night of the ego. Because which aspect is actually experiencing the dark night? The ego is experiencing a tremendous shift through the awakening process. And on some level, we have to be kind to what the ego has to experience. It is having to shift and change all of its belief systems right down to the foundational level of what reality even means, of where love is sourced from, where security is sourced from. And so the ego experiences a continual death, rebirth, birth process. This process, at various points, will be experienced as a dark night. And the dark night can be experienced in many ways, for many lengths of time. Essentially, what is the dark night of the ego, or the soul, however you wish to refer it? It is an experience of our own darkness. It is a period of suffering. It is a period of experiencing a change in reality, in our reality that we cannot handle. Because a new truth is emerging that is desperately trying to break through. And in order to break through, something needs to break down. When we desperately hold on to our beliefs that serve an older structure, an older paradigm, the greater the suffering. When we begin to loosen, be open, and radically change our beliefs, which is a difficult thing, because our sense of security is challenged in the world, in ourselves. It allows a crack for the light to enter. And as a part of you breaks down, it provides the gateway for this new part of you to break through. And this new part is awakening through you. And so how we perceive our suffering directly relates to how we see the suffering on the planet. Once we understand that every soul has a unique divine contract, plan, journey, creation, not simply creation, a co-creation with their higher self, with Great Spirit, with all of the others in their soul family, and in turn, all of the others on this planet, as we are all connected. Every soul is experiencing what they are creating for their greater soul experience. And however difficult that may be for us on the outside to witness, the way that we can appreciate what is happening is to first look at our inner experience. The more comfortable you become about the process of suffering as a part of the awakening process, the more that you are accepting of your own suffering, your own dark, the more that you are accepting of your past experiences where you have experienced traumatic experiences, painful experiences. And the more that you understand that there is a weaving, navigating path that is leading from all of these experiences that are waiting for a shift in perception to serve you always in this moment. And whilst all of our experiences may not be fully healed, it may take a lifetime or lifetimes to fully heal that in the way that we understand how to heal. They provide much more than seeking to be healed. They tell stories. Stories about you. Stories about your power. Stories about your love. All experiences are uncovering the awakening light that is rebirthing through you. Your soul presence, you, can never be touched, can never be harmed. Yet the outer experience, the personality, the ego, the emotions are all directly connected with the stories and experiences. And of course, all of the emotions that emerge from all of those experiences are completely valid. They carry the stories within their feelings. And at various points in your life, you will feel similar experiences in your past emerge in new ways, telling new stories. And you may feel that you thought you healed this a year ago or 5 years ago. Yet there are always new layers of storytelling. And it's not so much that you are not healing that experience. It is that experience is waiting for the right time that you are in to tell the right story. And when you can be receptive to the story it is sharing, you awaken more of your gifts, more of your realizations. And it is here that we see the incredible design behind all experiences. They are strategically placed within your life to awaken realizations for the rest of your life at key points, all to do with your divine awakening. And so our relationship to suffering, our own suffering, directly relates to how we perceive, relate to the suffering in the world. This does not mean that we ignore it. We have compassion for it, great compassion, because we understand suffering in our own way. However, it does change how we act and react and respond, and instead provides a new place where we respect the soul's journey and ask for guidance to see if there is any area that we are in fact being called to interact or interfere with. And if we feel that call, then we know. And And by observing the world, we are then activated to participate, to relieve suffering, which is always our goal. And here lies a paradox again. There is always a goal to help relieve suffering. However, simultaneously, there is an understanding of the purpose of suffering. And this is why every soul can only move through their own suffering when they are ready. And they are only ready when they are receptive enough to receive the gifts that that suffering is trying to provide. This great awakening that is occurring within you takes on many forms. And as you become more at peace with what is actually happening, you're given the gifts of a greater seeing, a greater truth of the awakening process, which with its playful energy will always seek to overturn what is known and provide a greater way of looking at things. It is always seeking to liberate. And so trusting in the awakening process itself allows you to move through and be guided through the experiences that you're having in a gentler way. Because once again, if you're listening to this, you are awakening at an accelerated rate. And it takes a tremendous amount of courage to be willing to face all of the parts within and even have the sliver of desire to want to heal, to want to expand, to want to reconnect. And that process in itself is training. It's training you in many, many ways and activating your power, your sovereign power, your divine power, your sacred power, and activating your belief in yourself, your true self. Blessings on your awakening. Namaste. Namaste, friends. Every Sunday I'm holding a Divine I Am transmission and activation. These are opportunities for you to delve deep into your spiritual transformation. They offer a space to clear, purge, release lifetimes worth of limiting patterns, karmic stories, cycles. And they also provide an activational process, awakening dormant gifts, abilities, and realizations that you have amassed from lifetimes worth of growth. I offer these on a pay-what-you-can-afford basis, and I invite you to journey with me and all of those who connect as we shift consciousness together. Namaste, and blessings on your journey.